What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. Tonight, I'm going to be answering all of your questions in the order in which they came. If you want to skip the line, which it looks like we have a lengthy line tonight. So if you want to skip the line, leave a super chat. That money goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country. And as always, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. Liking us helps us get in front of other Michigan fans so we can continue to get more activity in the chat box. As always, if you want even more Michigan recruiting information, you can head over to thewolverine.com today. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. Get exclusive insider information on everything Michigan recruiting. The team transfer portal is not that far away. Basketball, anything you want, plus a great message board community with thousands and thousands of users over at thewolverine.com. Again, just use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months. Last thing before we start answering your questions, tonight's show is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey. Dollar Shave Club's collegiate razor handles combine grooming with glory, letting students, grads, and fans show their school spirit and style. From the sink to the stadium, shave with school pride. Visit dollarshaveclub.com to grab your college handle today, which is obviously Michigan. You can see the maize and blue diamond grit handle there. Limited edition. These are going fast. Don't miss out. It's only $8, which is less than a lot of things these days, like less than 2 bags of Halloween candy. So don't miss out. Go over to Dollar Shave Club. You don't even have to sign up for anything. You can just get this $8 University of Michigan diamond grit handle today. So go ahead and head over to Dollar Shave Club and get a nice shave while sporting your school pride. All right, guys. So like I said, if you want to skip the line, you can hit that super chat button. Each user is limited to 3 questions. If you want to ask a bonus question, you can also use the super chat. And let's go ahead and start with the first question again. And the questions are answered in the order in which they came. Zachary Pizot is here bright and early around 1 p.m. And he says, update on Hayden Finney, Trent Henderson, and any other potential LSU flips. So with Hayden Finney, man, Michigan's already been working behind the scenes with Finney for a while. If you remember, and for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, he's the top 100 cornerback committed to LSU by way of California. Now, Finney made his first visit. Okay, can you guys still hear me? Yes. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I guess my cap turned on my headphones. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, Hayden Finney, top 100 cornerback out of California, committed to LSU back in the spring. Michigan hosted him for an in-depth visit a couple months before he committed, or I think about a month and a half before he committed to LSU. He's been pretty locked in with the Tigers throughout the whole process, but obviously LSU did a fantastic job of winning him over and doing everything right in his recruitment. But again, Brian Kelly just got the boot, so no pun intended there. But yeah, Brian Kelly's gone. That means the door is wide open for Michigan to make a run here. But even before that, Michigan stayed in contact after his commitment. He, has been in touch on a weekly, monthly basis here with Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan, who actually visited Finney when Michigan played at USC in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. So now that Kelly's gone, I think the door is open even more for a potential visit, which we could certainly see happen, either this weekend or for the game against Ohio State. So I think Michigan, even before the Kelly firing, was a factor. And with the Kelly firing and potential staff shakeup for LSU, Michigan becomes, the biggest threat by far to flip Finney away from LSU. In terms of Trenton Henderson, who's the top 100 edge out of Pensacola, if you remember, Michigan was a finalist for him. He ended up committing to LSU, and then some of his other finalists were Auburn and Florida, and those schools obviously have their own problems going on. Florida just fired their coach. Auburn's coach is on the hot seat, and Texas was the other finalist. And UC Sark has NFL interest apparently. So maybe the door does open up for Michigan. I don't think they're in the market for another edge right now, but with Julian Walker wavering, it wouldn't be a bad idea to circle back to Trenton Henderson. I really like Julian Walker. I actually like Trenton Henderson better. He is like a souped up Nate Marshall type of edge. So I was really impressed with what I saw from him in the spring. And, I'd love to see Michigan circle back on Trenton Henderson, but there's nothing significant to report there like there is with Finney. Zachary Pizot says, give us your prediction on how the Julian Walker saga ends. If he flips, are we going to push for another edge? I don't know, man. I mean, that's the thing. It could, you say cough, cough Henderson again. I'd really like to see it, but I think Michigan's focus so far has been on keeping Walker locked in, and he's made several visits to South Carolina. We knew that was probably going to happen given his dad is part of their strength and conditioning staff. The thing that kind of raised an eyebrow for me was 2 weeks ago, one of those visits to South Carolina was an official visit, which makes it a little bit different than, oh yeah, I'm just going to support my dad and enjoy a game. He actually took an OV there, which gave him an even more extended look at the program and gave the coaching staff there a real chance to sell him. Now, he is set to be back at Michigan for the game against Ohio State. That's huge for two reasons. One, Walker has not been to Michigan since before he committed back in the summer. And two, his mother did not join him on his OV. So I think it's important for Michigan to, one, get him back, but two, also really sell his mom. I think South Carolina is going to be a threat to flip him until he actually puts pen to paper. I think it's okay to be cautiously optimistic with Walker, given the fact that he did initially choose Michigan over South Carolina. He values a lot of things that Michigan has to offer on and off the field. He's set to be back for the final game. And the fact that South Carolina is struggling on the field and Beamer's been tied to the Virginia Tech job. So I think, again, it's okay to be cautiously optimistic that Walker will sign with Michigan, which I think Michigan is. But at the same time, they are fully aware that they're going to have to fight to keep him. So do they look at other edge prospects? Maybe. But again, right now, the focus is on keeping Walker. It's really hard for me to give a prediction today. I honestly, you guys know I'm a betting man, so I would shoot it straight with you. But honestly, I really wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. I'd like to see how South Carolina performs on the field the rest of the way. Do they struggle? Do they start to pick it up? How does that Michigan visit go at the end? There's still a lot of variables here before signing day. Zachary Pizot says, JJ Dunnigan, Blake Stewart, are they interested? Do we need another safety? Feels like other positions are more important. JJ Dunnigan was committed to Kansas. He's kind of a similar safety prospect as Jordan Deck. Michigan showed some interest here, and they could circle back to him now that he's back on the open market. He's been a riser in the rankings. But again, he's similar to Deck. I don't know if Michigan never officially offered him. So I think that one's kind of wait and see. I wouldn't rule it completely out since there is familiarity there, but again, more wait and see. Blake Stewart's an interesting one because, we know Michigan's looking for a top end corner, and that's why they're recruiting Haven Finney and CJ Brona and Kari Adams and guys like that. But Obviously, Michigan lost a commitment from Dorian Barney, who was their nickel take. Blake Stewart is more of a nickel than he is a true safety in Michigan's scheme. He would actually fit that role really well. There has been some contact there, so I think that one's interesting. Nothing super significant yet, but I think Stewart's worth keeping an eye on because he's a similar player as Barney, and I saw Stewart in the offseason at the OT7 finals in Dallas, and I'd take Stewart over Barney. So we'll see. Tyson Smith says, any talk of Michigan taking a second quarterback? You said you would talk about it when the time was right. Yeah, there hasn't been any significant talk about it. I mean, I'd really like to see it. For those of you who don't know, Brady Smeagol, Michigan's current quarterback commit, had an ACL injury that's keeping him out his entire rest of the way for his senior season. ACLs are kind of tricky, and I wasn't super high on Smeagol before the injury. And you look at an already thin quarterback room that Bryce Underwood is in, you don't have a truly capable backup. I mean, I guess you do, like if Mikey Keene were, healthy, but or fully healthy. But I mean, you look at the guys that they've recruited. I mean, most of them are gone. Like Alex Orji's gone, Jaden Denegal is gone, and then Jaden Davis, obviously, still is Jaden Davis. So I think that it would be smart for them to explore adding a quarterback, but you also have to keep in mind the type of quarterback you would be bringing in probably wouldn't be that highly touted this late in the cycle. So you're probably talking about maybe you try to steal like Oscar Rios, who I really liked, who is more of a high upside guy from Arizona. Or maybe you circle back to Nathan Bernard, who was a project guy who committed to West Virginia. Remember, he was the second option behind Brady Smeagol once Rios went off the board. And then, maybe Tommy Carr, if there aren't hurt feelings from the CJ Carr recruitment. He's had a really nice senior season. He's committed to Miami, Ohio. So those are the types of options you would have. And those are more development type of guys anyway. So, I could see the argument for both sides. I would be a fan of doing it. Just bring in another body that you can maybe groom into something. But again, nothing's been really significant there right now. Tyson Smith says, is BJ M ever going to get DQ Forkba on campus? So I posted a note on Forkba on the board today. He has a game on Saturday. He's the 4-star linebacker out of St. Francis. I believe this is his third high school. He was briefly at IMG Academy, and then before that, he was at a school in Georgia. Again, he has a game this weekend, so the only opportunity to host him would be for the game against Ohio State. This recruitment has been really interesting. He was supposed to commit to Florida this summer, didn't end up committing. Michigan made a big run, then things cooled off, then things started to warm up again, and now it's kind of just a real gray area there as Michigan continues to have a need at linebacker. Florida could be a factor depending on who they hire. Not a factor right now considering they don't have a head coach. Mizzou received a prediction. Some thought he would commit there here this fall. He did not commit to Mizzou. That's still a possibility, but we'll see. He just took a visit to Maryland, just took a visit to North Carolina. We'll see. It's been an interesting recruitment. Tyson Smith says, what is the best Halloween candy? What is the worst? The best is either Reese's or Kit Kat. And the worst is definitely candy corn. But the second worst, hot take, is Snickers. Snickers is trash and it gets way too much hype. It's on the lower level of Halloween candy. It's down there. If someone gave me a bag of Halloween candy and it had Snickers, those would be the last to be consumed. So Snickers is trash, man. Get Snickers out of here. They have a nice hype job because they're a low level recruit. Customer service says, let's address this when talking about BE, and I think he means Braylon Edwards. I wasn't talking bad about him. I will never talk bad about old trackmate. My point was he didn't run a wind legal sub 11 until after I graduated from Michigan. Times you looked up were in senior year in college, you agreed Braylon Edwards was elite. I was wondering why you were always talking down Michigan's wide receivers because they aren't sub 11. If you look at the 100-meter progression of past elite pros like Frankie Fredericks and L. Christie, and Jalen Pyle could be a sub 10.8, 10.9. As a senior like Braylon Edwards, they could be solid later risers in college. So that was a long-winded thing from customer service, which he came on the show a couple of weeks ago, I think, and talked about how Braylon Edwards basically wasn't the fastest guy and his speed improved at Michigan. And he's upset that I want Michigan to recruit more speed at wide receivers. So here's the thing, man. Braylon Edwards, I was a child. So again, I don't have the perspective maybe some of you guys have that are older than I am. I was a child when Braylon Edwards was around. I was a big fan of Braylon Edwards. I said it on that show. I had a Browns Braylon Edwards jersey. He won me some fantasy football championships. So I'm at least familiar with Braylon Edwards, even though I didn't look at him as a recruit, obviously, since I would have been a child. But look, Braylon Edwards ran track in Michigan, which is a great feat in itself, one. Two, he was what, 6'3", maybe a little taller, more than 200 pounds. You're talking about a big, physical, big body who was talented enough to run track in Michigan. So he's kind of a freak, an outlier, right? When I'm talking about Michigan's room being slow, I am not talking about Braylon Edwards type of receivers. They don't have any Braylon Edwards type of receivers unless you want to throw in, the recent lands like Jamar Browder and Jacob Washington, who aren't of that talent level or that caliber, but do fit the physical profile and being taller, big bodies. Here's an example. Quincy Porter, who signed with Ohio State last cycle. I was a Quincy Porter fanatic. I loved Quincy Porter. I talked about Quincy Porter all the time. He was one of my favorite wide receivers last cycle. I was not expecting Quincy Porter to go out there and run a 10.7 or a 10.8 because he is a big-bodied 6'3", 6'4", 200-pound plus wide receiver. Why would I expect him to go out there and run that type of time? Same reason I wouldn't have expected Braylon Edwards to do that as a recruit. Now, I think big bodies are great. I love big-bodied wide receivers. But you look at the wide receiver room that Michigan has right now. Is Channing Goodwin 6'3", 200 pounds? Is Amarion Stewart 6'3", 200 pounds? Is Fred Moore 6'3", 200 pounds? I know he left. Samaj Morgan, is he 6'3", 200 pounds? Jalen Pyle, is he 6'3", 200 pounds? No, these are not bigger bodied wide receivers. These are slot receivers. You cannot make that comparison. Your slot receivers should be either shifty and dynamic, like a CJ Sadler type, or should be straight line, have speed, right? You're recruiting guys who are not bigger bodies, who are true slot receivers, who run slower than 11, and on top of that are having trouble catching the ball. So I want Michigan to recruit more speed because, one, they need more speed in general at the wide receiver position. You can't have a room full of slot bodies who can't run. So you need speed. Two, the offense has changed, evolved under Chip Lindsey. It would be great to have speedy guys in his offense. Three, you have a new quarterback, Bryce Underwood, who has tremendous arm strength and deep ball accuracy. So it'd be great to have burners, not just at slot, but on the outside, who can stretch the field vertically, like Zion Robinson coming in, right? So again, we're talking about different body types when we're talking about guys like Braylon Edwards or Quincy Porter. I would never expect them to run that. But if you're a slot guy and you're not running below an 11, that to me is concerning. And especially, again, the way the offense is evolving, you need more speed in that wide receiver room. It just is what it is. Why, as a fan, why would you not want more speed in the wide receiver room? That's a game changer, especially with the way the offense can evolve under Lindsey and with Bryce at quarterback. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, yeah, you can tell me Jalen Powell could improve his 11.9 100-meter time, or, Samaj Morgan could improve his 12 flat 100-meter time. Give me guys that are already fast that can fill those roles and get even faster. And for, guys that are going to make the argument, well, what about Andrew Marsh? Look, Andrew Marsh, I was also high. There are places for other types of receivers too. I'm not saying Michigan just go recruit a bunch of track guys who can't catch or run routes. You obviously have to recruit fast guys who can do those things as well. And you need more of them in general. Again, based on all the things I've already talked about, there's room for other types of receivers too. It's not like I wasn't high on Andrew Marsh. The only guys I had ranked ahead of him last cycle were Andrew Babalola and Ty Haywood. So I was high on Andrew Marsh. Travis Johnson, he's a bigger body in a sense, but he's more of a lean guy. He's not at 200 plus. He's barely at 180. But the thing about Andrew Marsh and Travis Johnson, who everybody knows that I love Travis Johnson too, the thing about those guys is they have elite skill sets aside from the speed, which is adequate. Travis already being a long, springy athlete who could have been a D1 basketball recruit, just insane athleticism and leaping ability. And then on the Andrew Marsh side, you have a guy who can play in the slot on the outside, very, very physical, which you need physicality in this offense. A guy who's a tremendous attacker of the ball when catching it, and a guy who is a decorated high jumper and can outpoint the ball and play bigger than his size. These guys have elite traits, not Halloween treats, elite traits that mask not having the elite speed. The types of receivers that Michigan has recruited that I named off don't have those traits. And again, speed kills, man. Like, you just need more speed for those types of, if you're going to bring in those types of receivers, they need to run. Okay. Michelle Wallace says, Florida State commit to flip to Michigan, Jay Timmons. Okay. Jay Timmons is from Pennsylvania. He's a Florida State legacy. His father played for the Seminoles. Florida State has a lot going on with Mike Norvell. Man, this one's interesting. Michigan's been in contact. They're going to visit him next week during the bye week. Ohio State has been considered the biggest threat to flip him. Ohio State also working on CJ Bronaugh. I think we'll have to see how Morgan's visit goes next week and if they can solidify a visit. I believe he's set to be at Ohio State this weekend. So this one's kind of wait and see how things progress the next couple of weeks. Michelle Wallace says, Deuce Gerald's Jabari Mack not visited Michigan yet. Do you think they can get him to Michigan for a visit? Well, with Deuce Gerald's one, I don't know that Michigan wants to spend NIL on another defensive lineman. Obviously, there's familiarity there. So, that one, much like Trenton Henderson, we'll see if they explore that option. Jabari Mack would be interesting. He definitely has some speed. He actually has familiarity with Bryce Underwood. I don't know if Michigan's looking to add another wide receiver though. So he's a top 100 guy, and he's 6'2", 200. So it's not like he's a little guy. I think he'd be a very welcomed addition to Michigan, but D-line, wide receiver, not really the positions of need here down the stretch. Ben Rickett says, what are your thoughts on Aiden Reeder? Aiden Reeder is a 3-star linebacker committed to Wisconsin who is set to visit Michigan officially this weekend. I honestly have not had a chance to really sit down and watch him. Michigan just offered him late last week, and so this official visit came together pretty quickly. I will say that the staff has been looking for senior risers at the linebacker position. Aiden Reeder's film popped out. St. Xavier out of Cincinnati is one of the best programs in that area. So, he's a guy that I have to learn a little bit more about. But in terms of his recruitment, I think he's certainly a guy to watch closely this weekend. I think Michigan is rapidly emerging as a true threat to flip him away from the Badgers. Michelle Wallace says, any updates about the Michigan kids coming to Michigan to play? So I think she's talking about in-state kids. Like I've said before in previous shows, there just isn't many in-state kids Michigan has shown interest in this cycle, and I don't see Michigan adding an in-state kid this cycle. 2027 is obviously loaded. Dakota Warren is scheduled to be back on campus this weekend, and they're continuing to work there. They're in a good spot with guys like, four-star tight end Anthony Cartwright, top 100 offensive lineman Jakari Lipsey. So they'll definitely land some in-state guys next cycle. Ricardo Kitchen on 300 edge out of Muskegon. It just won't be this cycle. Ben Ricketts says, with so many coaching changes this early on, would you anticipate that Michigan could be more active compared to the last few years in the February signing period? That's an interesting question. I haven't really given a lot of thought to that, just because it seems like even with coaching changes, recruits still find a way to sign in December. I don't know how many high-end recruits were actually available last cycle for that February period. But maybe, it really depends on how Michigan closes the December signing period and how things go in the transfer portal, which, remember, is now from, I believe, January 2nd to the 16th. So I think, they'll be aggressive in the portal, but say if they miss on some portal guys or they don't close with some of the guys they want to here in December, then maybe that could be an option, but it's hard to say, not knowing who's going to be available in February. Michelle Wallace, I think you already asked 3 questions, and I think Ben Ricketts, this is your last question. And he says, where does Michigan sit with Blake Benton and Cole Ryder? Blake Benton is underrated or under the radar linebacker in the 2027 recruiting class. He's visited Michigan a couple of times already. I think Michigan is in a strong spot early there. And Cole Ryder, I don't think Michigan has offered. Daniel Rebane says, EJ, it's been a minute, so I just have to say thanks for all you, and I hope you have a wonderful upcoming holiday season with your wife and cat. Appreciate it. When looking at linebacker, we just saw Braylon Hodge pick Oregon over Michigan. Nick Abrams is still at Georgia. And now we're down to Thomas, DQ Forkba, Waivoda, and Reeder. Does it just come down to a little NIL at linebacker? It's not a position that Michigan has historically spent on it. Also good to hear from you, Daniel. Always a great commenter on the show. Michigan just hasn't spent a whole lot or invested a whole lot in linebacker. I mean, if I were Michigan, they've flirted with doing that with Nick Abrams. Like, they've talked to him about NIL, but just doesn't seem like they've gone all in. I mean, I would at this point, considering what the linebacker board looks like. I think it comes down to NIL. I think Brian G. Mary could obviously do a better job on the recruiting trail, and it's just a combination of those things. I think the thing that should give Michigan fans some optimism, or a better way to phrase it is to, I guess, put down the pitchforks a little bit, would be that Michigan has had plenty of success in the transfer portal at linebacker, and I'm sure they will be aggressive there. Tom says, hi, EJ, question. Why has Peter Bork fallen in the Rivals ratings? Do you agree with this drop? Rivals just released its new 2027 rankings like literally last week or the week before, and I don't think Peter Bork fell. He was already like number 109 or something. So he's 108, and he's 82 on the industry ranking. I do think that Peter Bork is a top 100 recruit, a back-end top 100 recruit. So I could see him making a jump in the next tier. The thing you have to remember is these rankings came out again, last week or a week before that, New England starts their high school football season really late. So you'll notice like Peter's played less games than all the other commits in the class. So maybe it's just seeing more film, but he's had some really strong performances, including this past week, just put up 350 and 3 touchdowns. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. We do have a super chat from Wolverine Casual. I, for whatever reason, can't get it to pop up on the screen. There we go. What commits do you think are underrated relative to their ranking? Heard Luedecke is having a great senior season. Where do you think he lands? So what recruits, what commits do I think are underrated relative to their ranking? Speaking of linebacker, I really do think Markel Dabney is still undervalued. I think linebacker in general is a really tough position to evaluate. I mentioned on the show that it's definitely not my favorite position to look at. Usually I look at 3 things, which is, are they athletic? Can they run? And are they comfortable in coverage? And Markel Dabney checks all those boxes. He's a tremendous athlete who also plays running back and wide receiver for his high school team. He can run for sure. He has plenty of speed. He gets sideline to sideline in a hurry, and he's very comfortable in coverage. Actually has a lot of experience playing safety. So I think Markel Dabney he's still very raw. When I went out to see him, I was like, Markel doesn't know exactly what he's doing yet. He's not taking the best angles, but he can be turned into something for sure. And I like his frame too, man. He's added some really good weight, playing with more play strength. So I really like Markel, man. I think he isn't, whatever he's ranked, like he's in the 600s or something. I think he has an argument to be a low 4-star. So Markel's a commit that definitely comes to mind. I don't disagree with a lot of the rankings this cycle, to be completely honest. Luedecke is having a great year. He got a bump in the recent 2026 rankings released. He got bumped back into the top 300. In terms of where I see him ending up, I mean, they're recruiting him specifically to fill the Makari Page role, which I basically said Luedecke is a better version of Makari Page. I graded Makari as a recruit as a low 4-star, and Jordan I have graded a little bit higher than that. But yeah, he is having a great senior season. I mean, he's been tackling machine, and he's also been making plays in coverage, which is great to see. Tom says, awkward question. If you had to say, what is Brian Jean Mary's biggest challenge, shortcoming with recruiting effort, inability to make connections, lack of NIL, other? I would say, one, he doesn't have the NIL spending, kind of like Ron Bellamy. Like, it's wide receiver, linebacker. These are positions that Michigan is not really spending top dollar on, at least not right now, or they haven't found somebody to really spend it on. And 2, I think Brian Jean Mary he historically has a good track record. He did land Junior Colson his first time at Michigan. I covered Brian Jean Mary at Texas, and he was even the recruiting coordinator for Charlie Strong. But I think recruiting gets tougher as you get older for coaches and for reporters like me, right? So it's tougher to relate to kids and things of that nature, and to keep up with the consistent calls and travels. And so that could be a part of it as well. But yeah, I would love to see Brian Jean Mary step it up, but I do think he also needs some help on the NIL side. But again, they've just been comfortable not spending there and, getting guys out of the portal. Daniel Rebane says, lastly, with Smeagol down with a torn ACL, do you expect Chip to look for a new quarterback in the class, maybe Troy Hoon, Jaden O'Neal, Nathan Bernard, or is it too late? My guess is Bork won't reclass. I don't think Bork can reclass, but I don't think he will. I touched on it earlier in the show. I think Michigan should, but if they do, it is going to be a guy that's, more of a high ceiling development type of guy. But we haven't heard anything significant yet. Tom says, I'm not seeing any elite cornerbacks flipping to Michigan in the 2026 class. You and I might differ in using the word elite. So will any top 10 rivals rated cornerbacks commit to Michigan in 2026? Any top 10? What is Finney? Is he top 10 or top 15? He's 19. Geez. Okay, Rivals is not kind to Haven Finney. I think Haven Finney's elite. I agree with the industry ranking. Looking at guys in the top 10, no, none of these guys. I don't think Michigan does get a top 10 from a Rivals perspective. From an industry perspective, Haven Finney and CJ Bronaugh are both top 115 recruits, and Jamarion Vincent is right there too. So if you were to stretch your requirements for elite, then I think they do end up with one of those guys for sure. We have a new super chat from Michelle Wallace, and she says Salisi Moa was at the Michigan State games, a Michigan State game, I guess. Was he there to watch his brother or maybe take another look at Michigan? Yes, Salisi has not visited Michigan, and we haven't heard of Michigan really staying in a lot of contact with him either. If it were my guess, I would say he was there to support his brother. His brother does play for Michigan State. He's been pretty quiet and pretty solid to Tennessee since committing to them in July. KT Trapples says, EJ, does Bryce Underwood have any connections to that Joe Sloan class that we could hit up now? Man, I don't want to say too much there just because, like, if any school is reaching out to these guys, which obviously back channeling goes on with agents and stuff, like it's considered tampering. So I'll just say we'll see who hits the portal. If there is one guy that I'd like to see Michigan go after, if he does hop in the portal, it'd be Phillip Wright, who was committed to Michigan at one point, wide receiver. He has legit track times. He ran in the 10.5s. He would have been, fantastic to keep last cycle. All right, before we go into rapid fire tonight, we have another sponsor, and that is MyPerfectFranchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands, or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? Andy is the guru on all things franchise. You can contact him over the phone at 404-973-9901, or you can shoot him an email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. He's always available. He'll even set up a Zoom call with you, and he has all types of franchising options, whether you're interested in an Arby's to advertise their new steak nuggets, or you just want to dish out some regular Chick-fil-A nuggets, or you don't even want to get into food. He has a ton of other franchising options available. So hit up Andy Luedecke today with MyPerfectFranchise. All right, let's go rapid fire. We are over time. Toes Kane says, what's up, EJ? What's up? Maddie Hanin says, hello from France. A shout out to you. I've been to France. Annecy. Awesome. Tom, do you have a razor? Come on. At Dollar Shave Club, a cool razor is only $8. That's right, Tom. Unfortunately for you, we read that at the top of the show. But yes, Dollar Shave Club. Get your Michigan Diamond Grip handle today for just $8. Ben Bio Similar says, EJ, will you do next week Q&A while eating hot wings doused in the hottest sauce you can find? If you guys get me a gift card to Wingstop, I will do the show with hot wings, and I promise I won't struggle because I eat mango habanero on the reg. I'm Mexican, man. What? I was doused in jalapenos for using swear words when I was a child. It does not faze me. Frank says, any smoke with JJ Dunnigan? Like I said earlier, it's kind of wait and see there. Michigan already has a similar type of safety committed in Jordan Deck, and they did have contact with Dunnigan, but haven't officially offered him yet. Steve B says, what have you heard about DJ Pickett to Michigan? Again, the transfer portal stuff is sensitive because there are rules against tampering. So, we'll see who actually jumps in the portal, but Pickett would obviously be a guy to circle back with if he does. Salty Rock 2 says, hi, EJ. Do you think Michigan's 26th secondary class ends up consisting of future commit and recommit? I would say the class right now, obviously you have Deck and Clark committed. They definitely want to add at least one more. So I could see that being Finney or Vincent. Right now, I think those are the two most likely candidates, maybe both in the right situation. Maybe they do take another nickel to fill that Dorian Barney vacancy. Maybe they don't. Still kind of up in the air. Secondary recruiting is interesting. Not as interesting as linebacker recruiting, but definitely interesting. Wolverine Casual says, what Michigan commits do you think end up in the top 100? Obviously, Savion and Carter. I don't know how Malachi Lee's doing as a senior. Like, it's impossible to find any film on him. Maybe Travis works his way in there. Maybe, Ludwig works his way in there. Those are guys that are there. Titan Davis has had a good year. I could see Titan Davis making a leap in there. Julian Walker, if he sticks, those are some guys that come to mind. Wolverine Casual says, what rank do you think Savion ends the season with? Have you ever seen this level of domination in high school? He'll definitely end the season as a 5-star. I think he could work his way into the top 5. It's just rare for the services to really value running backs like that. But yeah, he's a rare type of guy. He's, dominated the high school level better than any running back I've seen, probably ever. Anthony Armstrong says, I think Michigan should consider a new wide receiver coach. Jason Wilbur says, okay, when are we cutting the fat with Brian Jean Mary? Lost out on Braylon Hodge. What happened there? Oregon's out west. He's a Colorado kid. They obviously do NIL at the linebacker position, and they just lost that one. It wasn't one where Michigan led and then all of a sudden he ended up committing to Oregon. That was always going to be a tough battle with Oregon and Texas. So, it is what it is. Wolverine Casual says, what 4-star linebacker does Michigan have the best shot at? Maybe DQ Forkba, just because that recruitment's been so weird. I think of the linebacker targets, they have the best shot with Aiden Reeder, who's coming in this weekend, but he's a 3-star. Lippy Geitman says, given the struggles we've seen with punting the last few years, and also how big of a weapon a good kicker can be, why don't we see Michigan recruiting top kickers and punchers at least every other year? They do. They offered a full scholarship to Samaha. He just didn't work out. They offered a full scholarship to Doman, and he transferred. They have a kicker committed this year in Micah Drescher. It's not like they haven't. Those are guys that they've taken here recently, or like at least in the last 4 cycles or so. They even took a long snapper, Colton Dermer, this cycle too. So, got to coach them up, I guess, because Samaha and Doman didn't, pan out here. I think Doman had some flashes here, and I think he's having a good year. So, let's go down to Gary Gaines, head coach of Odessa Permian. And he says, is Michigan going to have problems signing people in the portal because of when classes start and their rules for enrollment? I don't know when classes start, to be completely honest with you. I haven't really started getting into portal mode, especially with it being pushed back to January. Like I said, that window is now January 2nd through the 16th. I'd have to look at it. I mean, Michigan's admissions haven't really been all that friendly, but I don't think enrollment would really affect that too much. I'm sure Michigan has a plan of action for that, considering that, we're months out and they're fully aware of when that timeline is. All right, guys, that does it for tonight's show. By the way, if you don't get the Gary Gaines reference, go watch Friday Night Lights. All right, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. As always, if you want more Michigan recruiting information, head over to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com, and we will be back next week. Hope you guys enjoy your Halloween.